the Bliss Dragon. So excited about the Bliss Dragon and all that she offers. So I have my sketch and it is with me as I have my graphite stick to start a very loose gestural sketch on my 18 by 24 inch canvas. Once I get all those curves just right in the gesture period of sketching, then I go in and start rendering it more accurately while still knowing that the painting itself will create this, and I'm not necessarily going to be painting inside the lines, but I do want the structure, the general outline of where this beautiful dragon is going to be situated in space, taking into consideration the edges of the canvas, the flow and the movement, the sizes, proportions of the shapes. And then I'm happy with the sketch and I'm ready to paint. And so I have my sketch nearby, and I know that the Bliss Dragon, when she comes to me, is sort of pink and purple. And so I start off with a dusty rose with just a hint of peachy in it. And I have a wet paper palette over there on the ledge, lots of size brushes, some water. And I'm letting this first layer really be pretty watery. I'm using a lot of water as a medium to thin out the paint and just allowing the color on the brush to move through the composition and just move wherever it needs to be. And so the top, like the fluffy part of the body of the dragon, I'm starting off with all pink. And then the belly will be more of a fleshy, peachy tone. And yeah, just keeping it loose, knowing that this is just layer one. And I will do lots and lots of layers to build up this form. So yeah, just really allowing for the arm to paint, right? So here I'm kind of getting up and being more meticulous, but really allowing for the movement of the body to allow that gestural element for the paint strokes. And that sense of like letting go and just letting it flow is quite fun on a larger surface like this. And of course, you can work on whatever size surface or type of surface that feels right for you and whatever sort of materials you want. Almost all of this painting is painted with craft paint, those like $1 to $2 craft paint things that you find at the craft store, with a little bit of nicer quality paints mixed in throughout. But I think that, this is just a permission slip that you don't have to have the fancy materials to play with art. And I did probably spend $40 on the canvas, so that was an investment. But otherwise, it's not that big of an investment to be able to paint large. And, the negative space sometimes will speak to you if you don't have it planned out. Maybe you have specific symbols or images that you're pairing with your dragon figure if you are, in fact, painting a dragon. For me, I just kind of let it flow. I wanted it to be really intuitive and like a co-creation with the act of painting, and was excited and surprised to have the egg form join into this painting. So then I mix some greens and blues together to begin building out the background and letting it be pretty watery again. So you can always use an acrylic medium if you don't want to use water. You could use thicker paint and really have it build up and be thick. I love drippy thin layers of paint. I used to be an oil painter and it speaks to me. And the Bliss Dragon is really coming in now as this permission to express your emotions fully, which is having to do with the water element. And so bringing in water as an element personally in my practice here is speaking to the energetics that I'm receiving from the idea of bliss and from this dragon in particular. I did just pop in some Caran d'Ache, which are water-soluble crayons, and some more craft paint. I'm bringing in some blues, some blue-greens here in the background. And I do use a little bit of those Caran d'Aches later on. So yeah, just kind of allowing the background and the foreground, or the negative space and the positive space, to begin really flowing together. And I'm really big on when you have a color on the palette, when you have the color on your brush, really bopping around all over, positive and negative shapes, to wherever the painting is really asking for that color to be. A beautiful thing about painting is you can always paint over things if you don't end up liking, that color or, really anything. And yeah, so I'm bringing in that light blue green, and there's a cat, and really kind of figuring out where the highlights will be, etc. But you can see there's lots of drips happening, and it's just very, very organic and playful and wild, and just really enjoying the act of painting throughout this. And so here's really layer one. And you can see how wild and free it is. And this is honestly a great place to stop if that feels complete for you. And of course, I keep going. I'm now bringing out those water-soluble crayons. They're called Caran d'Ache. So nice to work with. And I'm bringing in some white to give me some ideas of where I want to have highlights and sort of what kind of fur or feathers or whatever you want to call it I want to render. Then I have this darker sort of greenish blue that I'm bringing in for some details. And now I'm going to just have a brush with water, and I'm going to begin working with wetting these areas of this water-soluble crayon, letting some of those areas drip. But you can see like everything was really light. And now I'm allowing for some of the darker values to come into the piece to begin to create more contrast, right? So it's not all kind of the same value where it's like, oh, it's all pastel and I can't really see what's happening until I come up close. Now you can kind of see more with the addition of a little bit of highlight and a little bit of shadow. So yeah, I've got this light pinkish white that I am now pulling through the piece to really build up the look of like a furry, soft dragon. Yeah, so this is really kind of the bulk of the painting. It's just building up layer after layer of these sort of furry strokes, right? So just building it up, building up the tail and how it's going to move and what color it's going to be and how it's going to pop forth, and just playing and letting the medium, letting the colors and how I want this piece to feel speak to me and tell me kind of what to try next. And of course, I've painted for a very long time, and so I have a little bit of this knowledge of the elements and principles of design under my belt that I'm able to easily access. That's really not important necessarily for you. My intention for you in this painting is really to just like express yourself and play. So here we are, a different day, everything's dry, a little bit brighter lighting, and I've decided that everything is still very, very, very light and pastel, and I really need to bring in some shadows, right? Some dark values. And so once again, just this repetitive sort of rendering of the furry chunks in this dragon fur here, this body. And it's just kind of like going area by area and bringing in these shadows or darker values throughout. And it's kind of watered down, but yeah, and I kind of go back and forth with positive and negative shapes or foreground or background, and just allowing that repetition, right? Sometimes as artists and makers, we kind of do the same thing over and over and over again until we get good at it. And when we are making maybe scales or fur or, some sort of motif that is repetitive, we really get to be in that more meditative state where we allow for the patience and we allow for that timelessness of spaciousness that we have really asked for by coming into this creative flow. But you can see with these darker values, now all of a sudden the Bliss Dragon is really able to pop forth and become a little bit more three-dimensional in the space. And now kind of bringing out that egg shape and bringing out those tail bits so that they pop forward with more contrast. And I'm like a big time lover of pink and green. I consider those both the colors of the heart chakra. And this Bliss Dragon is so loving. So I really wanted to stick with that palette. Of course, you may choose a completely different palette depending on what you're inspired by and what your first piece really looks like. And so contemplating what colors you want to use beforehand is often really helpful so that you can just have the paint on hand and then just flow with it. And of course, my sketch was colored in color. I just used some kid markers, honestly. And so that gave me an idea of what colors I wanted to have here. Oh, then I have like a brighter blue here, coming into some bold, saturated color to offset the really pastel color palette that I had up until that point. So that just gives a little bit more boldness to it. And playing with that, letting that bop around and flow. In that bottom area, I've got some nice like flowy lines showing up. Yeah, letting the brush strokes show, letting the drips show, just like allowing it to be painterly. Sometimes we want that control and we want to paint in the lines and we want everything to be just right. But the dragons really want us to play. The dragons want us to play and explore and be wild and a little bit mysterious. So now I have a purple. So I put in some like bright fuchsia pink with that bright blue, and it turned into this great bright purple color. And I have gone through and added even more shadow. So I'm actually outlining over top the shadow that I had in that blue color just to pop it forward a little bit more. And playing with the face. And I decide I want to kind of have some drips coming from the head. And so I flip the painting upside down so that the drips will go in the opposite way. And while I'm here, I have better access to the lower areas of the dragon so that I can bring those more bold shadow or dark values to all of the body of this dragon. I step backward a lot, right? Like I'm up close doing the painting and then I step back and take a look because it's important to see like kind of all perspectives of the painting and definitely take breaks. I mean, this is probably my third session with this painting by now. And so I take, hour breaks or day breaks where I am just sitting with the piece and seeing what it wants next, right? Oh, and now I have this beautiful like pinkish purple light value that I'm bringing into some of the background elements and letting that background mystery and beauty and sort of swirling of colors and values really begin to play. And I'm bringing that same color into the actual body of the dragon. And of course, the top of this is in full sun and the bottom isn't, so it's a little bit funky, but I really enjoyed painting this outside. It was literally just in time for the most perfect weather when this painting began. And so also that kind of soaking up the blissful moments of our lives and being in the elements and really tuning into how we can express ourselves through our bodies and minds with the earth, with her waters, with her wind and air, and with her fire. I highly recommend, if you're able to, being in the elements while painting or maybe while sketching, or just being there and receiving some wisdom from the benevolent dragons. They come through very clearly in the natural elements. They don't like it as much indoors under the artificial lights, etc. So yeah, you can see I'm really pulling up the highlights here, making the Bliss Dragon look really fluffy and allowing the lower values to kind of push back so that it feels like they truly are like a shadow within the body. And here we are on another day, and I am working on also building out the body. And I've got a lighter, brighter pink color that is flowing through. Everything's getting even fluffier and furrier, and just kind of letting that flow. Yeah, I decided the tail needs a little bit of wisps that are kind of outside of those main shapes. And here I am coming in with a really light pink with like a hint of blue, trying to really build up the highlight area of the figure and inviting the background to become more just cohesive. Seeing like the background, what values are happening and how can I merge them so it makes sense. And there are some areas in the painting that are still kind of showing through the first layer, that real watery, drippy layer, which I love. And then areas that are more opaque. And yeah, once again, that repetition of bringing the highlight in toward the whole entire body, so that it can really pop out where it needs to. And rendering the egg shape a little bit more. And then I decide that I want some really sort of neon greenish yellow, but also sort of watered down. And so I play with that as just this stroke underneath the bottom of the figure, the dragon figure. And I also bring that color in onto that belly to kind of bring a little bit more into that space. Yeah, and once again, just bringing that element of water, the drips, the wild chaos, and just releasing the control with these drips. And this is the piece as it stands. And, I'm not sure if it's finished, but I feel like it is complete for you all. And you get to make your own now. Enjoy. And I'm excited to hear or see what you create.